This is a supplemental reflections and maybe partial recap video for our All for One Regime Diabolique Lights and Darkness campaign. Now, the way we've set up the campaign, this really shouldn't be a recap of one of my sessions, but it is. Those of you who are subscribed to the channel know that last week we made a session run by me available, and we described it at the time as an epilogue. The session before it, which was called The Ties That Bind, after we played it, it started to bother me. I wanted the opportunity to be able to really finish that session. It had come to a conclusion, but it left an atmosphere or mood behind that was stronger than I anticipated, and it didn't really match up with how I perceive the Lights and Darkness campaign. It was just so very dark at the end. So I asked the others if I would be able to run this epilogue. They were kind enough to allow that to happen, which I appreciate. And it turned out, as we were setting this up, that Null Inquisitor, Sebastian Allard, that his decision to leave this collaborative campaign, well, it was going to happen sooner rather than later. And so some of the threads that had been introduced in the Ties That Bind session could really stand or could benefit from being addressed if he was planning to leave sooner than later. So why not give him the opportunity to resolve this vow of vengeance that his character has. So with those two things in mind, I entered into setting up this particular epilogue session, which was called, and this is the first hint about the nature of this session, it was called Family Matters, or from another point of view, it's called Family Matters, or both. Everything about this session, in a sense, has a dual nature, or there's some aspect that could be taken another way. Like I said, I don't really want to get into a recap. What I'd like to do is just give my reflections and a farewell to Sebastian in the context of this campaign, not farewell to Sebastian forever, but just in terms of his character, his participation in this campaign. That's so on and so forth. So how did I approach this particular session? Well, I wanted it to continue right where we left off. I wanted to do something about that mood of darkness. I wanted them to be able to act within the context of the Ties That Bind session. So we started immediately. They free the prisoners of the cult and return to the Musketeer barracks, where the first dual-natured thing happens. And this is the most overt one. And it kind of sets up the chain of things that I'm going to do. So we know that in Jean-Marie's mind, and in the player of Jean-Marie, we know in Null Inquisitor's mind that this is it. This is the last session for this character. But the Musketeers don't know that. So he's been brooding. He's been growing darker and darker as this situation goes on. But he's also been silent on it because there's so much for them to do. Go here, go there, discover this, uncover that, foil this plot, and free the captives. Now is their first pause, their first brief respite. And as they're coming into the barracks, they're met by the head of the Musketeers' company, Monsieur de Treville, and he praises them for all that they have done. And his praise is a rare thing. So it's special, fills them, I think, with confidence enough that Alphonse Briscourt is able to question him on something which had recently happened. and that he had been hesitating about asking him. But at the same time that this is playing out, there's a lot of activity among the Musketeers, and even D'Artagnan and Aramis are present in the scene. And while our characters are talking with Monsieur de Treville and talking with my character, Martin's lackey, Claude, the finder of secrets, D'Artagnan and Aramis are speaking with a very important mover and shaker in All for One Regime Diabolique, and of course in the books by Dumas. His character, I feel, is very understood in the context of, or misunderstood in the context of Dumas' writings, because when he gets translated to the screen, he's presented in a way which doesn't really reflect what he later becomes in the series of the romances of D'Artagnan. But in terms of All for One Regime Diabolique, we haven't met that many of the signature characters. We have kind of encountered the Cardinal in Francois' session, or my character has been observed by him. And in the session that I ran for Francois, we encountered Rossignol, who is one of the close confidants of the Cardinal through his own personal cabinet of ministers. But mostly we've been meeting historical characters drawn from the Game Master's appreciation of the history. So, this is our first encounter, other than just by passing reference to D'Artagnan and Aramis and Rochefort. Those three are together. And when our Musketeers conclude their business, they're able to hear the tail end of this conversation, which is a threat. So we have praise for the actions of Musketeers, balanced out by threat toward the Musketeers. And we see this peculiar relationship. We have the Cardinal's Guard and we have the King's Musketeers, and both should theoretically be motivated toward the protection of France and the health of all aspects of French life. And yet there's this strong rivalry between both guard companies to such an extreme degree that it would seem that the Musketeers' existence is being threatened. But our characters don't have time for this. They have other things to do, like sleep. Jean-Marie is planning to leave. But now they are informed by Claude that, their brother-in-arms is missing and in the Bastille, this famous prison, and that all traces of his imprisonment have been erased. So he had been summoned to meet the Cardinal. That meeting is off the books. No one will admit to it having been happened. No one will admit to taking him to the Bastille. He's there under a number, not a name, and so on and so forth. So Claude has managed to uncover all of this, and here is our next situation. Right? You are leaving the Musketeers, Jean-Marie. Philippe, you are hoping to rise in rank and importance, and similarly with Briscourt, you're hoping to rise in rank and importance and become a real social figure. Can you risk going into the Bastille against the express wishes of the Cardinal to free someone he's secreted away in there? Can this happen? Are you willing? It turns out that yes, they are. All for one. Right? The all for one side of the dichotomy of a Musketeer's existence. They are willing to put themselves on the line for one of their companions. Likewise, we see reflected in Martin's behavior, one for all. Now, we've got, in an earlier Reflections video, we looked at the four characters. We have Phillipe and Alphonse as one side of our coin, and we have Martin and Jean-Marie as the other side of the coin. right? But if we look a little deeper, we've got Alphonse and Philippe as two sides of a coin, and we have Martin and Jean-Marie as two sides of a coin. And in this recap, let's take a look at Martin and Jean-Marie. They're both serving as musketeers. They're both loyal musketeers. They serve the king. They put their life on the line again and again to protect the royal house. But Martin, who has a vow of revenge sworn against him, and who has this goal that he will reclaim his birthright, which has been stolen from him. From his point of view, his membership in the Musketeers is not unimportant. It's not transient. It's not something he's doing while trying to do something else. This is his vehicle. This is his way to achieve this goal. The only way he can redeem the honor of his family is to serve the crown in this way, achieve fame, achieve a reputation that allows him to erase that stain. For Jean-Marie, I get the feeling in conversations that I've had with Sebastian, this is more like practice. This is Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins in the prison in, a foreign land. It's just practice. He's always had this thing on his mind. He said on several occasions, if his wife, who's keeping their house in Orléans, if she were to come to Paris and say, come home, he would go. If he found a lead to the werewolf which killed his son, he would follow that lead regardless of what the Musketeers might have to say about it. So they are both motivated by revenge. They're both very serious characters. They're both focused on the occult side of our setting. One needs to be a musketeer, and the other one is a musketeer because he needs revenge. So, as the characters come to understand this about Jean-Marie, that they know he has to leave, they also can't let him go, all for one. So, they discover that Martin has left a letter, one of those, in the case of my demise or disappearance kind of letters. And it reveals all the secret information that he's been collecting about the different black magic cults tied to his own family that they might have to navigate. And very specifically, it delves into information surrounding Orléans, where Jean-Marie is from, and his knowledge of their connection with werewolves. So, they don't need to go to free Martin. He's absolved them of this. You can go, right? In the case of my death or disappearance, go. They go to the Bastille, and they are so clever. You've got to see what they do, what they're willing to risk and put on the line. And then, as they get into where he is kept, they discover that he has escaped. And again, so very clever with how they deal with Martin's escape. And now, completely free of obligation, they ride out to Orléans. We do a couple of different montages because time is short, and this was one of our longer sessions. It runs longer than 3 hours. And we really had to push to get to the end. And we'll talk about that in a later part of this video. But what they discover in Orléans is horrific. And this is the last major set of mirrors, or this dichotomy of choice. How will they respond to the horror that they find? Will they butcher it in silence like monsters? Will they come ravening in and destroy what they find? Or will they act with honor? And it's a question I haven't had time to think about deeply. I'm not really sure how they answered it. You watch it. Let us know. How did they behave? How did they respond to the darkness that they found? They deal with the Beauvais cult, and they have this battle with the head of the cult, which is one of those things as a game master you have to wonder how to handle. They came this close to extinction, but they have no way to know this. So do I tell them or not? I chose to not tell them. Maybe your decision would be different. Then they meet the werewolf of Orleans. They meet the killer of Jean-Marie's son, and they know it. He admits it. He revels in it. He's sick. And he's clearly a victim as much as he is a victimizer. He's locked up. He can never be free except on the nights when he is the beast. When he's a man, he's restrained. He's surrounded by trophies with names and dates of all the young lives that he has snuffed out. And he himself is only 16. He's on that borderline between child and man. He's old enough to go to war. But the war he's going to go to is one of an occult nature. He is a tool for the magical depredations and deprivations of his family. What will Jean-Marie do? Watch it and see. And this almost brings about the end of the episode. Jean-Marie has spoken of butchering evil like a farmer deals with his duties of butchering animals. What kind of effect does this have on a man? What kind of effect does it have on the thing which is butchered? Who can say? As the session ends, we once again end as my very first session began, with our musketeers facing off against the Cardinal's Guard, and very specifically with Alphonse Briscourt facing off against Henri. And once again, Henri is handled almost like a child and left prostrate on the floor, defeated, physically and defeated. His will is defeated, his heart is defeated by his treatment at the hands of Briscourt. And this goes to the very core of who the Musketeers are and the challenges that the Musketeers face. This esprit de corps. But as fighting men, what does it say about who they are and about their honor? How much of their challenges is created by their own actions? Again, this is a question I cannot answer. And so, after this double session, we say goodbye to Sebastian, whose participation has been fantastic and been a core part of the group. We'll be very sorry to see him go, but we understand why he can't commit to the campaign any longer, and we look forward to the next session run by Francois, and we look forward to hopefully doing some solo sessions as we did with the first cycle. I'm really looking forward to that because it won't be me this time. Someone else will be handling those sessions. So please do watch the video, especially if you do watch it. Go all the way to the end. And there's this idea that's been put forward by the players about the climax or anticlimax of the ending. Hangouts, I feel, is partially responsible. My own fatigue is partially responsible. And maybe there's a perception out there of how these kind of encounters are supposed to end. Maybe, just maybe, we can push against the way things always happen and see through to something else. Who can say? Talk to you soon.